We're going to have a special edition of the program, 90 minutes. It'll start at 9:30 Eastern time. If you would like to join us, please do so, because my practice, and I've been lucky enough to be doing this for a long time in this dream job of mine, that you get the spin and the interviews and all the journalists that have been stuck together all sort of copying each other's homework. But at 9:30 tomorrow night, the process of people who are not sitting around and learning what's happening in Canberra, instead we look at it with our own eyes, without the people pouring sugar in our ears. So we'll tell you the 5 things you need to know about the budget, plus a whole bunch of people that will debate it from all sides. So the great coverage tomorrow night, 9:30. No offence to all the other coverage, but after the main game, we are here to bring home the dessert, and it's going to be great tomorrow night, because we are across the tricks, and I'll show you all the different tricks about how they've pulled off a surplus, what they're going to do with taxation, and whether or not they're actually going to do anything of cost of living. But it's all sales pitch, sales pitch, sales pitch from the government right now. And we showed you just moments ago one of the excruciating little things that politicians put the media through, because the media demand a little footage to go with their pre-budget speculation stories that run largely in the 6 p.m. news. That means that the Prime Minister and the Treasurer of the day, Liberal, Labor, whatever, they sit there and they flick around through the books. Oh, this is a wonderful budget, isn't it? Because they have to talk. Because if they just sat there and didn't talk, it'd look weird. And if they just sat there and mouthed fake words, it'd be weird. So they just say stuff on the assumption that no one will hear it. It's cringy, it's awkward, it's weird, and this year it's the weirdest it's ever been. Behold, the Prime Minister and the Treasurer patting themselves on the back.
It's a great budget. Provides cost of living support, whilst also having that eye on the economy of the future.
And a great budget for women. All those decisions we took on women's safety, housing, the care economy, all these really important ones around driving economic equality for women.
Yeah. No, I think we should be really proud of it. You know, it's ambitious, but it's responsible at the same time. You know, it's got a lot of help for a lot of people, but also some investment in the future. And so, I think the whole team can be really proud of it.
Decisions we make today can set us up for the next decade and beyond.
I could play it over and over and over again as the ultimate metaphor of the bubble within the bubble within the bubble that, of course, exists in Canberra. But as you know, the Treasurer thinks that we're going to be able to, as a country, cut inflation faster than the Reserve Bank. Now, this essentially matters, not just because it's a number, but because it's the Reserve Bank who makes the decision about whether or not they do or don't leave interest rates, put them up, or hopefully, fingers crossed, pull them down. Jim Chalmers says we can fix it all by Christmas.
So the main difference is not necessarily a difference of opinion, but a difference of timing. And so because Governor Bullock released hers before the budget, and because ours will be released with the budget, it means it can take into consideration the spending restraint that we're showing, the way that we're designing our cost of living help.
But for the person who's actually making the decisions about interest rates, remember, they say if we can get to between 2 and 3% inflation, then they won't do anything more when it comes to interest rates in terms of increasing, and then slowly but surely will hold and then start to go down. But remember, she doesn't think we get there by Christmas in July. She doesn't think we'll get there by Christmas. She doesn't think that we'll get there by the summer cricket season. She doesn't think it'll be there until even state of origin time next year.
Inflation at the moment is still declining, but it's declining less quickly than we thought it would. So at the moment, we still think that we can make our target of coming back into target range by 2025.
So who do you believe? The politician who's just going to tell you they're doing something about cost of living but won't actually change anything in your life, or the person who's going to have to deal with the consequences of a budget that will find ways to pump even more money into the economy, thus becoming stimulatory and potentially increasing inflation? At the same time, petrol prices, well, they continue to go up, but the taxation on it won't change at all, because of course the government is absolutely interested in cost of living. For his point, Barnaby Joyce didn't miss.
Haven't we heard this yarn before on basically everything? Well, you got to make a choice. Do you think the RBA got it wrong with their PhDs and all their stuff, and the Treasury got it right, and the Treasurer got it right, the Labor Party got it right?
Jim's a smart guy,
their
isn't he?
promises are falling to the
There's a few PhDs in Treasury too, Barnaby.
Like, the promises are falling to the ground. In politics, he's got a PhD in politics, not in economics. The promises are falling to the ground like the leaves in autumn. The question everybody's got to ask themselves is this. It's their third budget. Is your life better now than it was when the Labor Party came into power?
And who could possibly say that it is? An Albo dozen, 12 interest rate rises, not to mention all of the other issues we talk about uphill and down dale. This is where the rubber hits the road, where the BS stops. Now, the BS will continue, of course, tomorrow, and they'll pretend that they've come up with something. I'll tell you by 9:30 tomorrow night whether they've delivered it or not. Through gritted teeth, I'll tell you that they've done the right thing if they have done the right thing, but I think we both know they're just going to say they've done the right thing. So where do the economists sit on this? There's a bloke called Chris Richardson. He's as much of a feature around budget time as any politician. He's been around for decades, constantly always in and around the media. So which way does he think things are going to go?
When governments give you a subsidy, they make your electricity or your rent or your childcare cheaper, that does lower measured inflation. There's a direct impact. The Bureau of Stats tells us about that. But it also gives families more money to spend. That's why governments are doing it. That extra spending, that indirect channel, can actually make inflation worse rather than better. So, great that governments are rearranging the pain. It's less clear that they are reducing the pain of inflation.
So that's the polite way of saying the Reserve Bank. Of course, the puffery and telling us how amazing, formerly Grim Jim, now Jim from Queensland, who's here to help you. We talked about this in some detail last night, all the puffy suck-up pieces. Oh, here he is buying flowers on Mother's Day. Oh, are the cameras here? How did that happen? Well, interestingly, the flowers are actually a little bit of a metaphor because just like everything else, flowers have gone up since this bloke became the Treasurer. Somebody went and actually had a chat to a bunch of florists who came back and said, among other things, everything has increased in price. The cost of growing the flowers in Australia has gone up, wages have gone up, super's gone up, casual rates have gone up, especially after COVID, which is why the cost of the flowers that the Treasurer is going to give himself, along with the Prime Minister and the mean girl, for how amazing their budget is. But the reality is, if you were somebody who bought flowers yesterday, you may notice they're a little higher than they were a couple of years ago. Of course, nothing to do with the government at all. Nothing at all. And then there were the puff piece. There was this particularly unique puff piece in the Sydney Morning Herald where they did coverage on the coverage of the puff pieces. So think about how sort of, Chris Nolan Inception. This is starting to, the dreams within a dream. Well, this is the coverage within the coverage of the Treasurer. Now, this, of course, was an interview he did with SBS that we showed you last night when he was shown people who were dealing with the cost of living. But let's get to the puff. Jim Chalmers' Sunday run begins at 3:46 a.m. and it's the warm-up for the budget. Oh. Now, in it, Jim Chalmers has 4 affirmations scrawled across the top of his talking points. 41, SH, HH and WH. Now, these are the guiding principles of the greatest treasurer of all time. SH means steady hands, and that's because they need to keep inflation in check. HH stands for hard head, a prompt about the need to find value for money. Oh. While WH is warm heart. He needs to be reminded about warm heart. A reminder that a government plans to do and must deliver cost of living in the budget. So because he writes notes on top of the notes about the lies they're going to sell you on the budget, oh, he's so well prepared. Thank goodness Dr. Chalmers, with his scalpel, is here to help. Full coverage tomorrow night, 9:30, here on Sky News. Believe me, be here. If you only watch one Paul Murray live a year, that's the one to watch. 9:30 tomorrow night, and be there for the whole 90 minutes because I'll have plenty to say.